So those wandering through the packed streets of Covent Garden in the 1780s might just have come across a young Joseph Mallard William Turner. He was born just there in Maiden Lane in what was then London's Bohemia in 1775. George III was on the throne, it was the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, and London was the largest and probably the dirtiest city in Europe. Turner's father was a barber and wig maker based in Maiden Lane in Covent Garden, and he was responsible for the creation of wigs for London's fashionable gentry. And he also sold coloured powders and pomades. One of the earliest self-portraits of Turner himself reveals how he was something of a dandy when young. Here he is, a boy with curled hair, frilled shirt, not quite the skilled oil painter he would become. Central London in this period was filthy, noisy and dangerous. And so if you were not hit by a goods cart or caught in a fire, you might get scrofula or cholera. It's little wonder then that the Turners decided that their precious son would be better enjoying good air outside London. And he spent much of his time from the age of 10 in leafy Brentford, Bristol and Margate. And from the off, he had a compulsion to draw. Turner's father grasped his son's talent, and he actually began selling his son's work from the Covent Garden shop, and he used to paste it up in the windows. Luckily for Turner, the barber's shop was close to the Royal Academy of Arts, which was then situated in the Strand. This was both a school and a professional association, and entry to it gave artists a free training, professional kudos, and in an era when the commercial gallery was really in its infancy, the chance to promote and sell their work at a very prestigious and well-attended annual summer exhibition. When one of the academicians saw Turner's juvenilia, he was invited to apply for the Royal Academy Schools. In 1789, he was accepted, aged just 14, and the following year, at just 15, he was exhibiting and selling work. But training at the Royal Academy was based around drawing antique sculpture and figurative art. It didn't include the study of architecture nor of landscape painting. And so Turner had to hone his proficiency in these by other means. At the time, London streets were being captured by the architectural draftsman Thomas Moulton. And Turner took lessons from Moulton, and his love of architecture, expressed at Sandycombe Lodge, owes much to Moulton. The young Turner also attended an informal school that was held every Friday in the home of a Londoner who was passionate about landscape painting. This was Dr. Thomas Monroe. He was the chief physician at Bethlehem Hospital for the Insane, and he ran an academy at his home by the Thames. Monroe had a modest cottage in the country at Bushing, and he often used it as a base for members of his academy to enjoy sketching trips en plein air together. And it was surely Turner's trips to this cottage in Bushey with Monroe that would inform his own decision in due course to build Sandycombe Lodge. From just the age of 18, Turner was building a considerable profile. He was a star, a prodigy from the very beginning. But he did have problems at home. Wigs had been falling out of fashion since the French Revolution, and so it wasn't long before Turner's father actually gave up his own profession to become his son's assistant. When in 1795 a corn tax was introduced, that affected the cost of wig powder. But once again, professional success was matched with domestic turmoil. In 1801, Turner's mother was admitted to Monroe's Royal Bethlehem Hospital, suffering from mental illness, and she died there in 1804. However, in the year of his mother's admission, he set up home with Mrs. Danby, who was an older widow, and she would give Turner his two illegitimate daughters, Evelina and Georgiana. 1804 was another important year for Turner. He was so precocious, adventurous and keen to make as much money as possible that he set up his own gallery to show his work. By 1807, the year in which he secured land in Twickenham to build Sandycombe Lodge, Turner's fame was such that he published his own Liber Studiorum, a huge publishing endeavour that delivered engravings of his work. And these now encompassed history painting as well as marine views and landscapes. By 1813, Turner could enjoy the Thames and the countryside around Sandycombe Lodge. But the design of the lodge makes it quite clear that this was intended as a gentleman's cottage, not a family home. And so it may be no coincidence that Turner's relationship with Mrs. Danby petered out in the very year that Sandycombe was finished. But within just 2 years of its completion, the political landscape of Europe radically shifted, making a British retreat suddenly less appealing. With the defeat of Napoleon, the continent was once again open to British travellers who could not be hungrier to see it. They hadn't seen it for years. Turner was massively inspired by overseas travel for the rest of his life, and he spent months each year in Europe. It was also progress that spelt an end to Turner's Thameside retreat. From 1815, steam travel had begun to take off, massively improving communications with Europe, but also more easily connecting London with other parts of Britain. And so suddenly the time that it had once taken for Turner to get to Twickenham, he could be exploring other parts of the country. Eventually, it dawned on him that this was a dream he could no longer realise. Sandycombe felt outmoded as people became fascinated by speed and looking outwards to a new, modern world.